You are listening to the Sacred Pathways podcast, stories and wisdom from walking the heart's way. I am your host and co-journer, Sydney Searchwell-Simpson, and I am thrilled to walk this journey with you. Bismillah. Let us begin. Hello, beloveds. Before we dive in, I want to invite you over to Substack, where you can access this episode in written word with exclusive videos, photos, and audios from this time in my life. It'll make the story and my processes come to life in a whole new way. While you're over there, I would love it if you introduced yourself to me and the community in the comment section. We'd love to welcome you. Without further ado, let us begin. There is truth in the saying that life can only be understood backwards. While a part of me is in awe that I am sharing this story now, I also know that sharing this story was always an inevitability. This is a story about how I found a true calling in life, one that was woven perfectly through the conditions I was placed in. It is the story of a yearning for something unknown, a call that followed me into my dreams, surfaced in the books I read, and whispered to me in meditation, until I finally said yes to being fully initiated into life. As Michael Meade beautifully expresses in his art, in his work, this tale shares the threads of fate woven into the conditions of my life and the creation of a destiny where my soul began to remember universal truths veiled by our modern way of living, loving, and relating. Here I found the magic of my own small yet irreplaceable story unfolding within as an integral part of the larger story of our grand, mysterious cosmos. The beginnings. I've always felt in my heart that there was another way to be on this planet. From as young as 6 years old, I struggled to understand why there was so much suffering in the world, and I wondered if others felt the same call towards realizing peace and love and compassion on the planet. There has always been a deep devotion to freedom and to life within me, and I knew then, as I know now, that I did not want to give my life to anything but the creation of a more loving and liberated world. I was deeply inspired by the stories I learned about in school of Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Sojourner Truth, and other folks whose lives were offered for liberation. Their messages resonated with something deep within me, and that resonance carried me through some of the earliest challenges of my life. When I was 8 years old, my mom entered a relationship with a man whose white supremacist beliefs manifested in years of physical, emotional, verbal, and financial abuse. For over 8 years, my family and I lived under his tyranny. Trapped in a home ruled by violence, I had a life-altering realization at a young age that while legal and political victories for Black liberation and women's liberation had been won, they could not protect me from the oppression unfolding within the walls of my own home. Freedom on paper did not mean freedom in reality. This experience as a child helped me understand at a very young age that challenging oppression isn't just about changing laws. It is about how we relate to one another, how power is held and used in our relationships with ourselves, other humans and beyond humans, and the earth. This seed, both a question and a quiet knowing of true freedom, is one that would unfurl as I walked my journey of life and blossom into the fruits that I offer you today. without my knowing. This realization opened me up to exploring the relational implications of generations of training under systems of oppression, and would eventually become my guide in how we can be free beyond this training. Its whispers, wise and persistent, first led me to activism. A necessary chapter. For many years, I felt the resonance of freedom in my advocacy for women's rights, Black liberation, and ecological repair. It felt like the path I had been searching for, the path that those I admired had walked before. Yet, despite my earnest pursuit of liberation, over the years I began to feel that something in my approach wasn't working. I began to notice how, even in spaces dedicated to justice and transformation, we were fighting for freedom within identities and narratives, beliefs, and relationships still shaped by the very systems of domination we sought to dismantle. The same patterns of control, fear, and struggle we resisted were showing up in our ways of relating to each other and to the world, and how we treated those who we deemed responsible for the crises we were fighting against. I felt in my heart that this limited the impact of our well-intentioned effort for a free and life-affirming world. After generations of violence, pain, trauma, and hatred created and sustained through colonialism, white supremacy, patriarchy, we became fixed in these ways of relating out of fear, protection, and habit. I became aware of the depth of our conditioning and realized that this conditioning is a seed that humanity continuously sows and thus continues to reap. A quiet voice within me kept calling me towards something else beyond this conditioning, something deeper, something I didn't have language for yet. But I resisted. I did not know what this calling was, what it wanted, or what it held. I feared what it would require of me if I fully listened. And even more than that, it felt like no one around me was talking about this disconnect. Many seemed comfortable within the increasingly narrow definitions of what it meant to work towards a better world. I wanted to believe in the ways we were moving, but something inside of me knew there was more. But a part of me was afraid. I was afraid of sharing the intuitive knowing unfurling within me. So instead of listening, I held on to what no longer felt true. I clung to my ideas of what freedom was, rather than surrendering to the daunting possibility that these ideas were limiting my experience of freedom. I was caught in opposition, defining my path by what I resisted, rather than surrendering to the deeper invitation to experience and to become what I was truly for. I let fear hold me back from experiencing the invitation seated in my intuition. But by this time in my life, despite my resistance, something had already begun to shift. I began to immerse myself in learning, permaculture, indigenous ways of relating, transformative justice, natural building. I deepened my relationship with the mystery we are all embedded in through spiritual study and direct experience, and something began to just click into place. I saw that there were endless pathways to practice freedom, pathways that felt alive, resonant, and deeply true in ways that the struggle against oppression never had. These pathways were not an alternative that I was learning, but ways of relating I was remembering, ways of being with the earth, with community, with myself, that honored life. And I started to wonder, if oppression is sustained through relationships, Could liberation, rooted firmly in love, be cultivated in the same way? Connected to liberation's aliveness, I could no longer deny that it was something deeper than an external condition that could be given or taken away. Liberation introduced herself to me as a nature to remember, inviting me to experience her fully. I found myself becoming increasingly tired of the ways in which I was approaching freedom. I was exhausted from speaking into a void, tired of trying to explain a possibility that so few seemed willing to consider. I felt like people wanted and appreciated the idea of a loving, peaceful, and liberated world, but we were all so weighed down by the reality and training of its opposite that it became a dream rather than a lived truth. More than anything, I was tired of myself talking about freedom. I didn't want to describe or convince people about freedom and its possibilities. I wanted to know it, to become it. But I had no idea what that could look like because in all of my searching, I had never encountered anyone who I felt was truly free. But I had finally taken my first step of commitment to the truth I felt inside of me. And this choice made me remember an ancient vow I made to speak from love and use my voice for truth. I decided to renew that vow to the earth with a passion so grand, I knew it would change my life for good. Life presented me with an opportunity to honor that vow when the inspiration came to create a video about the roots of the climate crisis and how we can move through and beyond it. This was the first time I felt I had the courage and commitment to integrity to share what was true in my heart for years. And, as fate would have it, that video would connect me to Claire, an energy healer from Australia. Our meeting, like all of those on this path, was fated and necessary for the unfolding of the drama of my life and the remembrance of my destiny. Letting go and unveiling truth with Claire. Carrie, a dear one I had connected to at a kirtan event the previous year, saw the video and told me that when she watched it, she felt called to share Claire's information with me. She described Claire as a kinesiologist who cared deeply about the earth and had run for office a few times before stopping to do energy healing work. I felt intrigued, but there was also a quiet tug of hesitation. I had never done energy healing before. More than that, I had fears about Claire herself, that she, as a white-bodied woman, would hear my experiences of racial pain and trauma, which at the time I held on to as a critical aspect of my identity, and from her own discomfort, gaslight me or even shame me. The unknown made me weary. Yet my curiosity and desire to trust this strange and magical unfolding felt stronger than my fear. I knew we were meant to work together when, in our very first call, she told me that she channels life. Life as the essence of everything, the energetic, evolutionary intelligence that formed and continues to form the universe across time. She explained that the modality she worked with, intentional healing therapy, was channeled from life itself to help people release whatever blocked them from knowing and being truth, to help them remember that they too are life. Something about this struck a deep chord in me. It resonated with the quiet understanding I had always carried, that there was a way of existing that felt effortless, aligned, and free in relationship to life. I was also drawn to how she lived, In many ways, she embodied the life I had envisioned for myself, living in an eco-village she built with community, deeply connected to the earth and beyond human life around her, participating in systems of creation rather than destruction and exploitation. Like me, she had been a political and social activist, but she had shifted to energetic activism, telling me she found it, quote, much more effective. Beyond all of this, she was one of the first people I met who truly understood what I understood and was only beginning to embrace. That the crises we face, political, social, ecological, relational, are rooted in something much deeper than policies or structures. They are crises of consciousness. Our sessions didn't shy away from complexity. Instead, they expanded my capacity to hold it while still moving forward towards becoming freedom. Claire consistently showed that she was a safe space to share the truth of myself with. And the more I was able to let go in that safety, the clearer, more connected, more confident I felt in trusting the voice within me, the voice I was coming to know as life. Her energy, the work we did, and the alignment between our sessions, and the messages I was receiving through my increasingly expanded intuition and connection to life eventually dissolved all of my hesitations and fears. I was finally able to see how the emotional pain and trauma I was holding on to were not keeping me safe nor making me free. They only reinforced fear and created barriers between me and truth, the reality of what is. Some of the most profound truths the work helped me access and embody were: fear doesn't keep you safe. Intuition does. Capacity is reality. Our responsibility is to build and accept capacity. The key to knowing truth is removing barriers to truth. I began to notice a shift in my relationship to life herself. I accessed a profound peace, trust, and surrender, and I began to feel myself in flow, in conscious relationship with life. I learned that life, this intelligence we are all a part of, knows exactly what is needed to bring healing if that is our intention. Through this work, I began to see how my own thoughts, actions, and beliefs had been shaped by the very systems of domination I had spent my life resisting. Systems maintained by blocking, censoring, and containing truth, disconnecting me and most of humanity from knowing that truth as the core of who we are. Working with Claire, I began to experience that liberation was possible, not just through external struggle, but through elevating consciousness itself. But to elevate and clarify our consciousness, we had to face and let go of our attachments, fears, social and cultural overlays and constructs, emotional pain and trauma, all of which veiled us from recognizing and realizing life's unitive truth. I started to wonder, if freedom was our true nature, why did it feel so hard for humans to connect to it? Why was there so much struggle and fear around something that should be effortless? And what was I really afraid of? I realized that I had been holding back from what my heart knew was possible, not because I doubted freedom itself, but because I was waiting for others to affirm that it was possible. I was still looking outward for proof and validation, rather than living it as my own embodied reality. That was the moment I understood why the old, rigid pathways of freedom had begun to feel hollow. Some part of me already knew the most powerful way to create freedom was not to chase it, talk about it, or fight for it, but to become it, to live in such a way that my existence itself was the proof. Encountering a living story and process of liberation. My time with Claire helped me clear so much and was critical for helping me embrace a new foundation in which to live in relationship to life. But I was still left with questions that she could not answer for me. How can I courageously step forward into living the change I want to see in this world? What do I want to do to deepen my connection to the practices and traditions of freedom I had been remembering? How can I act in accordance with truth and life's flow and trust where it leads me? It was at this time that, as life would have it, I encountered Joshua Kwaku Asiedu's story on YouTube during a sleepless August night. Connecting to Joshua's story was the necessary spark to fortify what was already aflame within me. In him, I saw the embodiment of the truth I was just beginning to accept as possible for myself. A human who had surrendered to the calling in his heart, faced and found freedom beyond his fears, and lived in the magic of life's timeless wisdom and flow. He wasn't just talking about freedom. He walked the internal journey to become it. His story affirmed what I was only beginning to glimpse, that true change happens not just through external efforts, but by fully becoming the change itself. Instead of resisting or participating in a world that disconnects us from the earth and our true nature, he surrendered to life's unfolding and found his own way of being. Meeting his story at that moment felt like magic, in the way Claire described it. The right thing at the ripe time. Because Joshua had shared his decade-long journey so openly, I was able to witness living proof of manifestation defined in intentional healing therapy as consistently aligning with integrity to allow life to deliver magic. Without realizing it, I had been waiting for this confirmation. I had already begun to open to new ways of being with Claire, but encountering Joshua's story showed me what was possible when we live in full trust and in full authenticity. It was a moment of deep recognition, of resonance so strong that I would not turn away. I knew in my heart that my life would never be the same. My pulse raced and grounded me fully into my aliveness and the vast potential of the unknown that was available to me if I finally admitted what was an unquestionable yes within. I was ready to trust life. I was ready to know freedom and live it in service. I was ready to be free. And life, who had been waiting for me to decide, sensed this yes. And within weeks, everything I had been clinging to fell away. Within a month of seeing Joshua's story, my romantic relationship ended. I lost all of my money, only to unexpectedly receive a grant that would fund a project I had been working on for 3 years. I quit my job earlier in 2023 with the guidance that there was something for me. And it turns out that something for me was not another job. I found myself admitting something I had been resisting. I didn't want to spend my life focusing on a career. I wanted to live my life authentically and serve from that space. More than that, I wanted my life to be my message, to embody freedom as fully and honestly as I could, trusting that life would support me. So, I grieved, I meditated, I waited for guidance, and when it came, it was clear. I was to move out of my home, despite having no solid income other than what I could pay myself from the grant. I was to go to Spain, and I was to see how sincerely I could walk the path my heart had always been calling me towards. Awakening in Oviedo and understanding true liberation. On my drive from Bilbao Airport to Oviedo, I found peace and an anticipatory excitement amidst the uncertainty of what was to come. As I drove through the bustling green rolling hills, I asked God what my guidance was for my time here. The answer came clearly. Rest in the heart of God. I thought I had surrendered to the guidance, but back then I still had an agenda. I planned to spend 3 months working as an au pair, but in my free time I would focus on my spiritual evolution, practice what I had learned from Joshua's story and my work with Claire, which was now on pause, and finally finish a fiction book that I had been writing for 4 years in just 6 months. That did not happen, thankfully. I also invested in a sacred service program to help me create entrepreneurial offerings aligned with my personal mission. My work schedule was light, just 4 hours in the evening, leaving my mornings and afternoons completely free. Most days I wandered the mountains of Oviedo, feeling their silent call. I connected with the timeless eucalyptus forests, watched over by bulls and cows, and greeted the familiar presence of yarrow and wild mint growing on the hills. In these wanderings, I found deep insights and moments of profound connection, deepening my experience of life's oneness. The mountains and streams received many songs from my heart, and I practiced intimacy with the quiet and eternal presence that I was feeling more and more every day within. Looking back, I see now how I was sitting on a critical bridge between the life I had known and the life that was calling me. Resting in the heart of God through communion with the natural world and the remembrance of our shared essence, I noticed that this was when I felt most myself. Not performing, not pretending, not trying to be anything but me. But when I turned my attention back to the entrepreneurial program or the project I had received funding for, I felt a disconnect, even though both were meant to serve what I believed to be my life's mission. At the time, I couldn't fully understand this disconnect, but hindsight shows me that I had attached myself to what was once true, a life centered on a career as a way to make change, and still had fear-built blockages like doubt that were preventing a full embrace of a new and unknown life reflective of the deeper truth I was connected to. These attachments were the final things life had to dissolve to help me access the profound breakthrough I encountered in Oviedo. Wandering and communing with the life around me, I felt in my heart that I could do this forever. Contemplate, simply exist, be transformed by the experience I was having, and write about it. And during one of these wanderings, I encountered a rock bed whose energy felt like the Earth Mother herself, warm, inviting, unconditionally loving. This sacred place would become the home of the most shattering moment of my awakening. I shared about this awakening in a post I wrote last year on Substack called Surrender Yourself, Just Surrender Yourself. There you can find video footage of my process and the first steps of the magic that unfolded after that day. But back to the story. On that fated day, I sat deeply with these questions. Why am I facing so much resistance in my life to change, to possibility? Why do I feel that life is mine to control? Why do I doubt life's intelligence and consider it less than my own? There was still separation in my mind between myself and life. As I sat with these questions, cried through these questions, and felt the rush of the direct, passionate pursuit to answer these questions, a grand clarity washed over me. I saw that this impulse I had to control life through performance, through following rigid pathways, was driven by fear. I also realized that this drive to control life mirrored the same consciousness of control and domination that was causing the genocide in Palestine, exploitation and enslavement in the Congo, and all other interconnected crises of our time. My spirit could not connect with my old ways of activism because I was trying to resist these systems externally before realizing that the true shift had to happen from within. I began to understand the truth that I live by today, that the call for liberation is a call from our true nature. It is a call to remember who we are beyond the consciousness of domination, which is the very root from which all oppressive systems and ways of relating grow, whether in our relationship to oneself, other humans and beyond humans, the earth, and now life herself. This consciousness ultimately veils the truth of life within and around us. The peace, the love, the compassion, the effortless harmony, the universal selfhood I was experiencing in silent communion with the mountains, rivers, cows, and forest, that was the true, eternal, unchanging me. That was the truth that I wanted to share with the world. A freedom that isn't attained, but grounded in what remains when everything else is released. The self that was trying to control how people saw me, how life unfolded, and how I should think, act, or serve, that was not me. It was conditioning, training built for survival within a consciousness of domination. I came to understand that without this consciousness, there would be no place for the intentions, values, beliefs, and systems of oppression to take root. This consciousness is the point of creation and recreation that humanity has been trapped in for millennia, leading to the collapse of ecosystems, relationships, and societies. Connecting to what exists beyond that became my aim on that rock bed. I knew then that if I wanted liberation, true liberation, I had to unlearn everything I had been told about who I am, who others are, and what life is. I had to trust life where I had been attempting to control life to guide me in becoming another way. This was what had been calling me all along, and my heart, one with the heart of God, would finally be received as my true guide. That silent, patient, ever-present essence within, the essence of all life, would help me remember the liberation inherent in life's true and unchanging nature. The mystery ever unfolding. That day on the rock bed, I surrendered in a way I never had before. I left transformed with the knowing that true liberation was not a destination, but a continuous journey of letting go of all that is false. And so life met my surrender with an invitation to live this understanding, to allow truth to unfold through me without resistance. It's been over a year since that reckoning with liberation on the rock bed. Since then, life has taken me on the most important internal and external journey of my life thus far. The very journey that has inspired the creation of this podcast and platform. From the moment I surrendered, life began to place before me the perfect opportunities to strengthen my commitment to trust its flow. I let go of the food forest community garden project I had been building in New York, an idea I once saw as essential to my purpose, and it evolved into a new project that allowed me to serve more communities. In doing so, I practiced the truth that life already knows what is needed for healing. My role was not to force it, but to be an open channel for it. I also let go of the pursuit of traditional success through a career, something I had once clung to out of fear that my authentic feelings and desires were not enough. And in that surrender, I came face to face with the truth. I am an artist, one of endless modalities, the most important being my life itself. My greatest work of art is my life, and the way I explore, create, and connect everything I find fascinating, all in service to the remembrance of truth. In embracing this identity, I arrived at more questions, none more important than what is true, here and now, and can I trust life enough to act on that? Knowing my tendency to attach to the first thing that felt secure, I decided to wait, to listen, to trust that when the right thing arrived, my heart would say yes in a way that would be impossible to ignore. So, when the opportunity arose to do an artist residency in Colombia, a country I had felt called to for 4 years, I knew this was life's next invitation. The right, ripe thing at the right, ripe time. Like always. There are so many stories and moments of awakening that have happened on this path since then. From the call that led me to live with a medicine woman for a month to work with ayahuasca, to surrendering to a river that revealed to me the very steps I take today. Some of these stories I will share with you here. Others will live in forthcoming books or appear in snippets during my conversations with other wayfinders on this podcast. But most importantly, I am a living embodiment of these stories and the transformation that they have heralded in my life. It is here, in my desire to share sincerely and open-heartedly, that perhaps, if our paths cross in person, you may come to experience the magic that I live in, the magic available to us all at the core of who we are. Since that awakening, my relationship with the unknown has shifted. Where once I feared uncertainty, now I embrace it as a companion and teacher. I had to accept that because of my conditioning, I did not truly know my own truth or the universal truth we all share. And so I surrendered to curiosity, and I let it lead me into discovery. I had to and continue to let go of many attachments to outdated narratives, physical belongings, to ideas, to beliefs, to pathways I once thought were mine or defined who I was. And most importantly, I had to drop fully into presence. The past and future, once anchors of control, now hold nothing I cannot access, love, or heal in the now. I no longer seek an ever-changing, unknowable outcome to attach to. Instead, I have learned to move with life's intelligence, moment by moment, trusting that the next step will always reveal itself when I am clear and open and courageous enough to receive it in the present moment. Here I live in a commitment to truth, not as a fixed destination, but as an infinite unfolding, a depth without end, a dance between my own becoming and the vast mystery of existence ever unfolding. This truth has many names. Some call it God, some call it life, the universe, the mystery. and some call it nothing at all. I have come to see that truth does not require a name, it simply is. And what it is cannot be fully known, only experienced again and again in deeper and deeper ways. What's important for me is not to control it, intellectualize it, or force it upon others. I only care about staying connected to and embodying this presence within and around me, here and now. And so, I surrender again and again in total freedom, in total authenticity, in service to the path that life reveals to me. And in doing so, I also accept a deeper reality that just as I am free, so too is life. I cannot control life, cannot bind it to my will, cannot force it into my vision of what should be. True freedom is not only my own, it is the freedom of all things, of all beings, of life itself, to move as it must. And so I don't attach to outcome, because I trust that life within and beyond me knows what is needed for the direction it is heading. A direction shaped by its own unfolding, its own evolution, its own intelligent knowing in perfect time. Now, and perhaps for eternity, I uncover what it is to give myself to this in total freedom, in total authenticity, and be moved by that which is, with or without our knowing. The invitation, Ehipassiko. What conditions are you placing on your freedom? Life does not need more people waiting for permission to be free. It needs more people remembering that freedom is who they are and to begin living from it. It is this point in which paradigm-shifting love, compassion, and peace can become our reality and be reflected in the systems, relationships, communities, and livelihoods that we build. This truth does not ignore the depths of oppression and exploitation that continues to harm life, human and beyond human, but insists that even within these realities, we are not powerless. We can connect to our power by accepting the conditions we are in and deciding how we wish to relate to it. The time is now. It has always been now, and it will always be now, to see clearly the war, the violence, the extraction, the enslavement, the greed, the disconnect, until you reach its root. And when you do, the choice is yours. How will you use your brief and purposeful time on this planet during the reckoning of disconnect and spiritual amnesia to root yourself in something different? For millennia, the consciousness of domination has shaped how we relate to life within and outside of us. But we are not bound to its belief, its limitations, desires, or its values. We do not have to carry them forward. Liberation is not about waiting for the world to change. It is about shifting how we live, think, and move through the world now, and letting that change the world. Liberation is a choice, one only you can make. And in doing so, your life itself becomes an offering, a lived invitation for others to remember and live in their own freedom. It also becomes a seed, a new pathway for freedom to be realized in terribly unfree times. There is only one guaranteed destination in life, and that is death. Why wait a moment longer to live from the freedom already at the core of who you are? Remembering life is a radical act. These days, I find profound freedom in the simple remembrance that I have a life. We all do. And before we were given scripts, pathways, and expectations of what that life should be, it was already ours. We have been conditioned to seek aliveness in accumulation, in validation, in distraction. But what if aliveness is not something to chase, only something to remember? Since I left my last job in April of 2023, I lost many of the things that I once attached my worth to: money, status, external validation. And yet, in their absence, I found something far greater, an unshakable experience of liberation, a knowing that I am truly provided for by life in ways that do not sacrifice my aliveness nor anyone's freedom. I have never felt more alive. I have never been more free. To remember life, as simple as it is a deeply radical act during these times. So I ask you, what is your life, this unpromised time you have, worth risking towards, even with no guarantee? Because the moment you begin to live that question, the truth of who you are, free, interconnected, an essential part of life's great unfolding, reveals itself. This is not an intellectual exercise. This is not about adopting new ideas or opinions. This is about experience. Experience asks us to step beyond certainty, to loosen our grip on the search for fixed answers, to enter the unknown fully, and let truth reveal itself. I will not pretend to have answers, and if I ever do, without realizing it, that's because I'm not perfect, nor do I have the energy to pretend to be, and I am living this process in every moment of every day. Truth is not a fixed point in which to plant a flag of righteousness. It is an unfolding, a deepening, a relationship with life as it is, whole, paradoxical, ever-changing, yet in essence always the same. I have arrived somewhere at the core, the heart of life, and I have discovered that it is blissfully endless. So I stand here open, curious, at peace with all I do not know, and eager to explore it. And in this openness, what can be known unfolds from the depths of me, not just for me, but for the whole of life. Beloveds, I am not here to convince you. Some days I remind myself that I don't even have to convince myself. My dear friend Noah shared with me the Pali term Ehipassiko, a phrase the Buddha used meaning, come and see for yourself, as I did after I encountered Joshua's story, as you can, having encountered my own. Our stories are threads in the vast tapestry of life. No two are the same. My path cannot give you the steps for your own, but it can spark something, a remembering, an invitation, a question. So I offer you this. Take note of what stirs something in you here in this singular story. Ask yourself what life, God, the mystery is revealing to you through the stories that you encounter. And listen, trust, decide from the deepest point of truth you can access what you are committed to. Surrender to life knowing the way and see what happens. Journeying together. Sacred Pathways is a singular fruit of the journey that life initiated me into, a way to support others in finding their own remembrance, their own path, their own unique story unfolding from within, not separate from the whole of life, but uniquely their own. I offer my story not as a blueprint, but as a mirror. What is here for you to see? This platform, like life, will evolve alongside the stories of those I walk with, those who are carving their own way and in doing so, changing the world. Life, in all of her intelligence, has brought us here to this moment together. And it's up to you to uncover why. I close with a poem that was written through me, one that came after I surrendered fully to the unknown. I offer it now in the hope that it inspires you to trust where you are and walk forward with all who journey beside you, seen and unseen, known and unknown, into the great mystery that life is inviting us into, within the heart of you, within the heart of us all. Walk the Earth by Sydney Searchwell-Simpson. Lightly and with humility, I stumble into surrender's grasp and find comfort in the freedom to not know and choose still to tread my path. Possibilities behoove me to live the curiosities unburdened by the weight of fixed answers to life's persistent questions. The forest is dark and deep, but in them lie those who know to navigate the depths of earth, root down, and grow beyond the seed. There is a freedom beyond fear, doubts, and worries, to trust with completeness that the magic life yearns to give begins where your feet rest, on the edge of uncertainty. You'll be delighted to find that each step you take is curated by the divine to nurture the soil that holds the seed's potential, a strengthening of love, the prospect of revival. So walk forward boldly, tired, scared, or weary, and trust that the answers, great tricksters, is your journey. They rest not at the end as a yearned-for destination. They tread the path with you, guiding you through your evolution. So decide, with a heart full of courage and a mind so free, to walk beyond the edge and join spirit's laughter in uncertainty. If you are interested in sharing your heart path story, art, or in sharing a paradigm-shifting conversation on the podcast, you can find the application in the show notes or the description bar. There you will also find links to join our community on Substack, where I share personal and emergent audios related to the episode themes and my personal process of living and being another way. Come engage and connect with other listeners and co-journers in the gatherings and conversations held only on Substack. You can also find the link to my website, Jivan Mukta Healing, to learn more about the work that I do to be of service to the world at this time. Until then, I wish you and your beloveds peace and presence on the path and journey. Connect soon. Thank you for listening to Sacred Pathways, stories and wisdom from walking the heart's way. As a budding show, I would be incredibly grateful if you supported this podcast by giving us a rating, sharing this or any other episode with your loved ones in person and online, and letting me know in the comment section below how this episode resonated with you. Engagement is lovingly received and appreciated if you have received value from this. See you next time.